Welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Brandon, and today we're looking at Oshi no Ko. Looking at the 8-choice build. This is kind of what the deck looks like overall. We're going to kind of break it down, looking at combos first, and then looking at the package as a whole, and breaking it down even further. Starting off, the reason you play this deck is for this level 3 combo, 3-2 Kana. This Kana allows us to be able to on-play heal, but the Climax combo itself is the real sticking point here. It does require experience 6 and having the choice in play. On attack, you pay 1, and then you gain the ability, when damage is cancelled, essentially Icy Tail 3 for level 0 cards. And for every card that's level 0 revealed in those 3 cards, you burn 2. So potentially cancel burn 6, but then it's really intentional trying to get damage through, regardless of the swing. So with that in mind, you need 7 stock to make this happen. There are a couple of things that go along with it that help make this even more effective. One of those things being this 3-0 event that allows you to be able to choose one of 3 different effects. The effect that's really relevant for this is either getting the Climax, which is the first ability. Second ability gives additional power so it can potentially survive on board. Not as useful because you're trying to finish out the game. But the third ability is also pretty useful as well. You pay additional 4 on play with the event to be able to give a character on attack burn 3. So effectively you can give a character 2 instances of damage so that if either of them cancel, combo is able to go off. To help encourage that as well, there's actually a back row assist that helps with this. This back row aqua allows us to be able to give the Kana in the middle of our center stage the ability to, on attack, look at the top card of your opponent's deck, either keep it on top or put it on bottom. So effectively, if it's a 0, we can put it on bottom, or if it's a level 1 or higher card, to keep it on top. This allows us that kind of additional ability to better direct where potential damage can go. So with that kind of idea in mind, it makes it a relatively easy assist. It has a secondary ability as well of an actual just assist and power, but a further ability that pumps up power for Ruby, Kana, and Memchoke characters. To help get to that point and help get those characters in play, we run a combo at 2, tries to help build up those resources. This combo requires experience 3, gets 1,000 power for every other character on stage, so up to 10k base, 11k with Climax. When the Climax is placed, salvage a character from waiting room, so basically so we can get our pieces for endgame in play. But additionally, when damage from this card is cancelled, you can stock charge 2 characters from waiting room into your stock. This allows you to be able to effectively either try to push damage or build up resources relatively quickly, trying to go for those bigger swings to be cancelled, so that way you can stock charge. But if one of those big swings go through, you're not lacking in the damage race. To kind of help assist that combo, to help make those things actually happen, we run the Brainstormer that allows us, when a Climax is placed, reveal the top card of the deck. If it's level 1 or higher, choose a character and it gets 1,000 power and +1 soul, on top of being a salvage Brainstorm. Fantastic card to have in the back row to be able to help just give additional soul, more likely to be cancelled in a single lane, so that way you can effectively build up the stock race in the midst of it. To help us get there, we have an additional package that we run at 1. This package does not require a Climax, which is why I'm running this one specifically. The Yuki kind of allows us to be able to kind of pair together to kind of in similar vein like you see with Cats or Measure Lane. They can pump up soul to each other to be able to also get a little bit bigger, a little bit more soul, and be able to, if you're only dual laning, to be able to potentially get cards into hand as well. So potential plus to hand, potential power on board to live cross turn. And it also plays into an event with the potential plus. That event being a torch event up through level 2. And when you hit level 3, you combine it with another copy of itself to be a neg soul counter in 2 lanes. Like, that's fantastic. that has the ability to not only help speed through your deck early, but when you get to late game and you don't necessarily want to speed through your deck, you effectively are able to turn that into an additional thing that is beneficial. There's still benefits of having this card in your hand at level 3. So those 3 packages allow us to be able to set up a relatively consistent opportunity here. The level 1 package allows us to be able to build up resources so when we get to level 2, we can throw it on our level 2 board, and our level 2 board immediately sets up for our level 3. You have a decent amount of mill opportunities, especially with the Torch event, that you have a relatively stable idea of what your board looks like, so you can kind of very much determine where and when you want your deck state to be for these different effects. And all these really just help set up the end game, and with the end game, you get that very much damage sticking turn to be able to close out games. So with that in mind, when we're playing this deck, we're playing our level 1 package into our level 2 combo into our level 3 combo. So we only run those 2 combos in this deck, just for a little bit more consistency, so we don't have to do as much searching for pieces to make those things happen. So instead of a level 1 combo, a level 2 combo, and a level 3 combo, we're bypassing the level 1 combo to have this kind of interesting package, which still allows us to play the game at 1 without sacrificing consistency in some of our pieces later in the game. Especially because we're running 8 choice, climaxes to hand, especially turn after turn after turn, can be difficult. To be able to kind of bypass that with this kind of combination of cards at 1, I think is a very helpful mechanic for this game. I think it's a very helpful thing for this deck. So looking at the deck as an overall function, we're going to continue on at 0 and then work our way back up to the top. We've already hit on the Brainstormer, and the Brainstormer's important role in the deck. We also run a copy of the Climax Swap. This Climax Swap allows us to switch between choice climaxes specifically, but be able to do that for basically free. So basically it's an on-play hand filter for Climax that does not require stock. Because we're just playing 8 choice, makes perfect sense. This is exactly what we want in this deck. Next, level 0 has an experience condition when it's in the level zone, that it counts as level 3 in level zone. It also has an ability to pay 1, remove a character from the level zone, and put this into that spot. So then look at up to 4 cards, choose a level 1 or higher, and add it to hand. So this effect doesn't really come online until after level 1, but allows us to hit another potential mill option to go through the deck. Opportunity to help guarantee our condition for our combos for experience, and also allows us to make sure that we are not color fixed for our level 1 game. Level 1 being on blue, we have a lot of blue stuff to put on stage that way. This allows us to do that, but also get our yellow experience conditions in as needed. We also run this Aqua. This is actually a relatively important piece of the deck because this can spawn in our 2-1 to the back row, not needing color. Once you're level 2 or higher, you pay 1, send this card to memory to spawn the 2-1 from waiting room into that spot. So you don't need color to make the 2-1 appear on stage. I think that in itself is actually a rather important mechanic for this deck. But it also gains the ability, when it's on stage, to pay 1 rest itself, to give a character on reverse salvage. So especially early in the game when we are playing around with the power game and trying to pump up powers off of the level 1 package to step over things, we can take advantage of that and get cards additionally to hand from that as well. So between this and then the potential dual laners part itself, you could be getting a full combo hand back into your hand. So just a really good conversion of stock into cards with this in play, but also has the ability to turn into a piece we want for our end game too. So like dual purpose, fantastic card for this deck. Another essential piece here is essentially our Climax Assurance piece here. It has the ability to pay 1, ditch 1, to look at up the top cards of your deck based off the number of other characters on stage, so up to top 4, and then choose a card from that to add to hand. It can be anything. My preference here is Climaxes. This is my Climax Assurance card. It also then has the ability to look at the top 2 cards of the deck and rearrange. So it's my Climax Assurance It helps set up for the brainstorm, make sure the level 1 plus is in the first position of those cards. So when we reveal it off of the climax placement, we can assign additional soul. So it's very much like an enabling card to try to help enable climaxes turn after turn as needed. Especially because 8 choice just doesn't regularly get climaxes into hand outside of the draw power of the deck. This is that enabler. And it can be done as early as 0, so basically it can be used at any point in the game. Next up with this level 0 is our Rico profile, the ability to ditch a card from hand to get a card back into hand. Typically you're going to hit zeros, so typically you're going to grab one of these zeros back into your hand, whether it's a climax swap, whether it's cards that you can turn into other cards. This allows us to better regulate what's in our hand, so we can make those informed choices going forward. This also has the potential that when damage is canceled on the cross swing, that when your opponent is attacking you in that lane, if you cancel damage, you can send this card into your stock. So it's just another way to potentially stock charge early. Rounding out our level 0 lineup, I have this level 0. This is our bottom deck kicker at 0. If you have 5 or more hand, it gets 2k power, and when you reverse your opponent, as long as you have 4 or less stock, you can send that card away to the bottom of their deck. I chose this over the coin flip. I think you're going to see the coin flip more often in a lot of decks. For me, they felt very similar in role with this card here. To help with the blue ratio, I went with this oversize as opposed to the coin flip. So that's our level 0 lineup. We already talked about our level 1 lineup in its entirety. At level 2, the only card we have not talked about yet is the anti-change backup that sends to memory. So it's a hard removal anti-change counter that is also rather cheap in comparison. It's a 2/1 counter that you pay an additional 1 and discard a card and remove a character from stage to remove that card from the game. Having the sack counter I think is actually relatively interesting, and being able to deny reverses I think can still be relevant in a lot of Swiss matchups. A lot of things at the top don't require reverses, which is why I don't think that the sack counter is as important currently as it has been in the past, especially against Avatar. But I think that there are still matchups in which that is relevant. Having the ability to have a sack counter and anti-change counter and hard removal counter all in the same card, I think is rather important, and for that relatively cheap cost, I think it's worth its place in this deck. You're running anti-change for Overlord anyway. This is the card. Finishing up with our level 3s. We have 2 level 3s we've yet to talk about. Our first level 3 is our early play. It's a 2 or less climax and waiting room early play. It gets additional 1000 power as long as your characters have the main trait of the series in play. Pretty much a 10-5 all the way around. Has an experience 3 that allows us to pick between one of 2 abilities to actually do. One is our heal, which is a heal to hand. So you discard a card and then choose a character in your clock and heal it to your hand. Or look at the top 3 cards of your deck and choose one and add to hand. So again, another potential climax assurance card on a bigger body that you might want in a lane instead of the level 0. Additional climax assurance I think is really important. Healing I think is also relatively important. Like having a healer is a relative necessity right now, I think, actually. I think having a single healer is actually can make it break a difference in a game sometimes. So having this access I think is really important. The last card we've not talked about yet is a potential double bounce card. When placed on stage, you may bounce a card, but you can also ditch a card to bounce a secondary card, which I think is relevant. But the secondary ability, I think, actually also sells it for me, personally, that as long as this is the last character on stage to be placed, but you have filled up the rest of the board already, you get to stock charge 1. So effectively, it will count as 1 stock. You'll pay 2 and then recharge 1 back. And then you'll refund 1. So effectively a 1 stock, 1 ditch from hand to remove 2 characters from board definitely can be worth some things. Open up lanes for your end game, so you're swinging souls, so they make more cancel more, so you might get more burns. So you can kind of just burn through your opponent's deck, your opponent's climaxes, everything. It's definitely a really interesting line of play. It also helps with some specific pieces as well. Like, for example, if you're playing into the Meliodas top end in SDS, and they have the double Elizabeth back row, you can remove both back rows and your burns will still go off. That kind of opportunity to be able to do that all on one card, I think is really important. The double bounce on one. I'm suspecting we're seeing more of that profile as sets continue to become developed, but being able to remove problematic cards from board, I think, is relatively important. And so having this as one of is essential as of right now, especially going into things like Shauna, where sometimes the Shauna player will play double. Where the Shauna player might play double of the anti-burn, just so that way they don't get burned if you have an answer to one. Because the last sets only have an answer to one lane as opposed to two. This one allows you access to double lane. Really trying to stick forward and push through that Shauna matchup. So, with that in mind, that has been the deck. This is the deck of Oshi no Ko. Really kind of going by stages 1, 2, and 3 respectively to try to get to that end game and close out. A lot of powerful tools in the set, a lot of powerful tools in this deck specifically, a lot of opportunity with it. With that in mind, we're going to have some gameplay for it on Thursday, and then next week we're going to be finishing up our Clock Talk series looking at the rest of the decks that we did not talk about that have some kind of relevance for this fall season, whether they are decks that have done well in the past, decks that we think might continue to do well in the future, and the decks that we have yet to talk about that this may be its first season of competitive play. So, with that kind of idea in mind, we will go through those decks, the decks that have been released up through December. December looks to be a relatively interesting pivotal point in the season. So we're going to finish that series out with a third video in that December timeframe, looking towards the stuff that we're beginning to get announced now. And hopefully we'll have that information fully by December to be able to look towards the rest of the season until May, when Worlds concludes that season. With that in mind, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. And until next time, have a good one.